We're joined by Juan Carlos Hidalgo, Project Coordinator for Latin America at the Cato Institute's Center for Global Liberty and Prosperity. Juan Carlos, if we can remember what it was like last January, the economy was shedding multiple hundreds of thousands of jobs every month, month after month. Big American financial institutions seem to be teetering on the edge. Is it kind of a luxury to be able to sit here in 2010 and look back and say, well, maybe you shouldn't have done that, maybe you should have done that? Was the Obama administration faced right out of the gate with having to put out the fire in a burning house to give us the luxury of arguing about what method you should have used to put out the fire?
Well, I think that certainly was a serious economic crisis, what President Obama faced in his first months in office. However, I think that the response to it was unfortunate. Many of the measures that were taken in order to prevent what many people consider would have been a Great Depression, a second Great Depression, are probably going to set the base for a new crisis in the future. Rescuing banks and letting them know that if they engage in trouble, they will be rescued again by the government. I mean, that creates an incentive for bad economic behavior. The Federal Reserve again has interest rates on the zeros and the historic numbers, historic lows. That is also again setting the stage for a new economic crisis. And the way that the Obama administration has intervened on every major industry, every major economic sector in the United States is also very worrying. I think that when it comes to spending, when it comes to government interventionism, when it comes to expanding the role of government in the economy, President Obama has come up to be a Bush on steroids, and that's quite a statement.
Should the AIGs, the big financial houses, have been allowed to fail with the consequent problems that would have followed that? Would the marketplace have simply absorbed that and moved on?
Look, capitalism without failure is like Christianity without heaven. You can have it. So effectively, some of these institutions would have to be let down, go down. I think that rescuing them sends a bad message for the future, because it's telling these executives, look, like if you get into irresponsible behavior, as they did, we're going to come up and rescue you. And I think that's an ominous message to send for future generations.
Juan Carlos, I imagine that Cato's not overjoyed about the federal role in education, but it looks like the Obama administration has tried to also create incentives for new designs and new approaches to education, create incentives for states to compete for various kinds of funding based on merit and achievement. Is there something in there that a Cato guy can like?
Well, when I listen to President Obama talking about tax credits to go to college, when subsidies, state help, I just remember listening to President Clinton, listening to President Bush, and how you change college education for home ownership. And then I see the next bubble popping up, It was precisely this kind of interventionism in home ownership markets that led to this crisis. And we're facing right now that the government is highly subsidizing college education and is creating a next bubble when it comes to college tuition expenses, college cost. And I think that sooner or later, many Americans are going to be faced down with that reality. College tuition expenses are going up dramatically, precisely because a lot of people are going into college giving these incentives, and that's not going to be good. Not everyone is prepared to go to college, and that's a reality we have to face. Many people are not made up to go to college. They're made up to go into the business world. They're made up to go into other endeavors, and I think that by pushing Americans into the college system this way, you're going to create the field for problem in the future. I don't think that the federal government should be involved in encouraging people to go to college. I don't see that in the Constitution in the first place. I think this is a state issue. States should have their own policies regarding their own institutions, whether they're community college, state colleges, primary, secondary education. I don't see a role for the federal government on this issue, and I don't see it in the Constitution either.
That the huge divide between the role of the federal government and state. And so then the question becomes, if there's not a federal role, then we're really saying that if by accident of geography you're born in Mississippi and Alabama, and your voters make a
You
decision.
can always move to states. There is a free movement of people in the United States. I was born in Costa Rica and came to study to the United States. Nobody is impeding someone from Mississippi to move to Massachusetts.
No, but I think this is the classic the
Exactly.
classic left-right divide, because there are people who would speak for that policy of subsidizing education by pointing out that someone with a college education over the long haul pays a great deal more into the kitty in the form of federal income taxes and state taxes than if they don't get a college education. That, yes, they have no, I understand your point about no business subsidizing it, but isn't it also an investment? You're investing in human capital formation that then pays back individual governments, but also the society manyfold.
And pays back individually too. People who go to college become richer. So I think that that's an incentive enough for people to try to go to college. I don't think that the government should try to micromanage society as to try to subsidize or encourage people to go to college. We also have to face a reality is that these policies promote people going to college who are not prepared for it. And they end up dropping out, their self-esteem is hurt, and we see this a lot in the black community with policies like affirmative action. So I think that we should take into account all this. And again, I don't see a role for the federal government.
Very, very quick point. Then we have Juan Carlos. Have the political events of this week made it more likely that the president is going to seek Republican help on getting his initiatives passed? And does that put him closer to being on the right track, in your view?
Well, the initial reaction from the White House is that nothing happened, and they're going to push for this healthcare reform, a healthcare reform that the more people find out about it, the more they dislike. I think that it's very risky for President Obama to continue this path. Transparency, his promise of transparency has been destroyed over the negotiations of this healthcare bill. Let's remember that candidate Obama, just a year and a half ago, promised that all negotiations regarding healthcare will be televised on C-SPAN. He broke that promise blatantly. And people are seeing this. Independent voters are leaving him in droves. Even Democrats are turning against him. And let's not blame here Republicans for what's going on in Capitol Hill. Let's remember that a lot of Democratic congressmen, the so-called blue dogs in the House of Representatives, are also scared of President Obama's agenda because they see it like leaning too far to the left, so far to the left that not even voters in Massachusetts are willing to don't have a stomach for it.
Juan Carlos.
I will see it as a winning card for Democrats, actually, to bring up immigration reform. Look, this year's census is going to prove that what we already know is that Hispanics are the largest minority in the United States. States like Texas, like Nevada, Colorado are going to win seats in Congress, actually, even to this census, where there are like huge Hispanic populations that decide elections, presidential elections. So I think it will be a very good move for Democrats to bring up the issue. It will be good for the economy also if we have comprehensive immigration reform passed this year. We commissioned a paper in the Cato Institute that showed that a very liberal regime of immigration that will allow workers to come legally to the United States for temporary permits, and also that will legalize the status of people who are currently in the United States undocumented, will make the economy grow $150 billion a year. So I think that President Obama will be wise to do that. Instead of, if he's so concerned about public opinion, then he should drop healthcare and focus on immigration reform.
Well.